Fresh explosions have been heard in Hezbollah's stronghold in southern Beirut, as Israel says it struck the group's intelligence headquarters. To get us up to date with a lot of it, let's cross now to Andrew Fox, defence expert and indeed a former paratrooper. Andrew, fantastic to have you back on the show. First of all, I want to talk about, what do you think Israel's campaign is going to be? We know that there have been 9 killed in an Israeli airstrike overnight, 14 injured on what was believed to be a Hezbollah-affiliated health centre. Are they just sort of going to micro-target leadership and assets? Is there some point they're going to think the job here is done?
Well, that's certainly one component part of the campaign. In the last couple of days, we've also seen the 98th Division roll over the border, supported by another Israeli division. They've already incurred 8 fatalities, so we know that there are 8 IDF soldiers who were killed yesterday. We've had activity in Gaza. We know that they announced overnight that about 3 months ago, they've had it confirmed that they killed the de facto prime minister of Hamas in the Gaza Strip. They've also taken out one of the guys from the Ramallah lynching in 2012. The famous red hands photo. And then, of course, we've got potential escalation with Iran in response to the rocket attack some 48 hours ago. So it's all going on, and it seems to be one kind of strategy is to try and decapitate, to threaten, to restore deterrence. And they're trying to push Hezbollah back out of rocket range so that 60,000 displaced Israelis can move home.
And what do you think Iran are able to do right now? And what is your response to the fact that Biden would not support an Israeli attack on Iran's nuclear sites? To me, that seems utterly ridiculous. Surely we should all be rather possessed by the fact that Iran might be close to building a nuclear warhead with intel given to them by Russia while they've been gladly enriching uranium for many a year. And yet Biden's sort of saying, oh, no, don't do that. We don't mind if the mad mullahs have nuclear weapons.
Well, I think it's important to remember that political rhetoric and political policy are 2 very different things. Throughout this campaign, we've heard a sort of relatively pessimistic and negative drumbeat from the White House that hasn't in any way paid out on the ground. The US forces are quite deeply embedded with the IDF, and they've certainly facilitated a number of operations, such as the strike on Hodeidah port in Yemen and in helping the Israelis respond to the missile attacks. So I'd be slightly careful, because that actually gives Mr. Biden an out. If Israel does strike the nuclear sites with American agreement, he can say, oh, I told them not to. So there might be some internal politics going on here. We are seeing reports today that they're looking at options for striking oil facilities, which is an interesting one, because that really does hurt the Iranian regime, but also it will hurt us because it will send our fuel prices higher. So that could be quite a globally unpopular move by the Israelis. So there's a lot of kind of smoke and mirrors going on at the diplomatic level at the moment.
What about when it comes to the United Kingdom? Because our Defence Secretary was quite quick to turn and said, oh, we helped intercept a lot of those Iranian missiles. And yet our former Defence Secretary, Sir Ben Wallace, has suggested that the UK's Type 45 anti-missile destroyers would actually struggle to respond, that RAF Typhoon fighter jets are thought to lack weapons needed to repel an attack such as that launched by Iran on Tuesday. Is that, again, some form of doublespeak? Are we, eyeballs deep in with Israel right now?
No, we're not particularly close with the Israelis. Our government has spent 3 months absolutely nuking our relationship with them. I had a meeting with the Prime Minister of Israel the other day, and 2 weeks ago, and he was utterly contemptuous when talking about the UK, quite directly contemptuous. So I suspect that relationship is not particularly effective at the moment, but I can't comment on exactly what happened militarily the other night, because I don't know. It'll be classified, and it's unlikely that they'll release the exact details of that.
I don't understand why the whole of the West aren't cheering Netanyahu on, who's basically, a one-man band trying to hold back the scourge of terrorism from a load of entities who'd quite like to see the lot of us all blasted to smithereens. I want to talk to you about Russia's part in all of this. We do know that Israel has allegedly struck targets in Syria, nearby perhaps Russian air bases there. There have been unconfirmed reports of the IDF going into some of the tunnels that Hezbollah have and looking at some of their munitions and finding them sort of stamped with Russian flags. How much are Russia involved in all of this, do you think?
Well, unquestionably, they're heavily involved. The region for decades has seen a strategic contest between the United States and Russia for influence. And we know that Russia were deeply involved in the Syrian civil war on Bashar al-Assad's side, which is also the same side that Hezbollah fought on. So, it's unquestionable that Russia has very strong links to these organisations. We also know that Iran is the biggest provider of tactical missiles for Russia in their fight against Ukraine. There's also very strong evidence to suggest that that the Russians helped in the planning of 7th of October. And I've certainly seen signals intelligence to suggest there were Russian operatives on the ground in Israel over that period. Indeed.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. So, or at least somebody who'd been trained in Russia. They've certainly had their phone flag up at a Russian military base on a previous occasion. So, yeah, unquestionably, Russia are deeply involved with this. And I've long made the case that Ukraine and Israel are two fronts in the same strategic global contest between authoritarian states and democracies.
I mean, this is the concern, though, isn't it? Because what we're seeing is essentially the anti-Western axis all cooperating and pushing against the West, who seem to be somewhat divided. While they parrot the same words such as, well, Israel has the right to defend itself, they don't really go much further than that. They're not really actively cheering Netanyahu on. It's a relief to know that America might be a lot more involved than we are. But we don't seem to be having the backs of our allies here, because we have a common enemy, and that enemy is, as I said, the anti-Western axis. But how capable are they? I mean, are we sort of resting on our laurels because we think, well, Russia's somewhat stretched in Ukraine anyway? They're going to potentially start running out of steam. There's not much they can do. Meanwhile, Israel's done a brilliant job of taking out a lot of the personnel and infrastructure and command and communications of the Iranian proxies, and who knows what Iran has up their sleeve. The Ayatollah's getting on a bit and nobody in that country likes him anyway. Is this a case of just sitting back and letting it play out in the hope that Israel's got this without trying to escalate it into what could become an all-out global conflagration?
I mean, that's, I think our enemies are more subtle than that. They're not looking for a direct military confrontation because they know full well that the United States is still the eminent global military superpower with a budget that exceeds the next 9 countries spending behind them altogether. They're much more clever. They attack us through economic means, through diplomatic means, using things like lawfare that we're seeing in the UN courts, and through things like trying to subvert our societies and create divisions within our own societies and weaken us that way. So our enemies are a lot more subtle than taking on a direct military fight.
Yeah, unfortunately, we're not really standing up to them in any of those areas either. Andrew, it's been fantastic catching up with you again. No doubt we'll be speaking very soon indeed.